Hello viewer, my name is Erastus Maina. I work for RODI Kenya. RODI Kenya stands for Resources Oriented Development Initiatives Kenya, and we are based in Ruiru. Today we are going to learn about fish farming. Fish farming is the way to go, bearing in mind that the natural water sources are diminishing with the time, or in other words, where we were getting fish in water surfaces, some water surfaces have dried, and also you have heard of lakes getting less water. Therefore, fish is becoming a scarce commodity, and bearing in mind that fish is a good source of good protein and also a good source of white meat. And the already existing water surfaces have been exploited by overfishing, and it has become a problem in sustaining the already existing fish market. Also, you have heard that in some lakes, water hyacinth has become a problem, and this competes with the population or good fishing. Therefore, the only alternative is to do fish farming. Fish farming is very ideal, provided you have got a good source of clean water and a space where you can construct your fish pond. Why fish farming? Fish farming is a good enterprise because, one, there is already very good market locally and abroad, and also fish brings very quick money because fish mature very fast and they can give you quick money. The other thing is that fish farming is very ideal even where land is not very suitable for arable farming, because you can transform that kind of land to a very profitable enterprise by constructing fish ponds. The other thing is about fish don't get many diseases like the other livestock that we keep, and therefore fish becomes a very ideal thing to do. As I had said, if you have a green source of water, you can be able to transform that kind of land and make a fish ponds, and then you do fish farming. The other thing is about you don't need to be near the ocean or near a lake to start fish farming. And if you can only get the two things that I have mentioned earlier, the land and also water, fish farming is the way to go. And also fish farming, you can be supplying your market the time that you need, unlike any other crops, because with the availability of the market, you can do what we call a partial harvesting of fish. This one is you go to your fish pond, you remove the desired amount of fish pond and also the desired size that you need, and then you leave the other fish to continue growing. As I was saying, that fish grows very fast, because if you introduce your fingering in a fish pond, you can be ready to harvest the fish within a period of 6 months to 8 months. So the site selection of a pond, you need a good size whereby you can stock your required amount of fish, and this is determined by the land that you have, but ideally in every meter square you can stock 3 to 5 fingerlings. And normally you need to locate your fish pond where there is a gradual slope, because normally you need to have an inlet and an outlet of water. The other thing is about the soil. Mostly you need to test your soil so that you know whether your soil can hold water or it cannot hold water. If your soil is very good in retaining the water, and this can be done by digging a small hole and you put water in that hole, and then you see the percolation of the water or the rate at which the water is getting lost. So if your soils cannot be able to hold water, there is another way of retaining the water by using a dam liner. A dam liner is a polythene paper that you put underneath the pod to hold the water. And this one is very good because a lot of water will not be lost through seepage. The other thing is about the location. You need to locate your fish pond where you know that there is no flooding that takes place, because if there is flooding, your fish can be washed away and you can lose your fish. So ideally, there are some basic things that you need to start digging a fish pond. You need a tape measure, a string, some pegs. You also need, if your soils are very tough, you need a pickaxe so that you can be able to dig your fish pond properly. And depending with the fish that you want to put, in an area of the 10 meters by 10 meters, you can be able to stock about 300 fish. And normally, a fish pond, there is one side that is shallow and another side that is deep. And ideally, the shallow end is about 1.5 meters and the deepest side is about 1.5 meters. And this is because with the fluctuation of temperatures, sometimes the fish will be able to go on the shallow side and sometimes to the deeper side, depending with the water temperatures. And also, you need to locate your fish pond where you don't have some big trees growing, because these big trees can also reduce the amount of sunlight to the pond, because the growth of fish is determined by the temperatures, and if there are a lot of shading, this can hinder the required optimal temperature for fish growth. And also the other thing that the trees can do is to harbor birds. There are some birds like the kingfisher that can eat your fish. And also near your fish pond, you need to have cleared all the bushes or tall grasses to avoid snakes, because also snakes eat fish. Therefore, it's very important to select your area properly, bearing in mind those factors that can be detrimental to your fish farming. So, after digging your fish pond, it's very important that you leave on the deeper side of the fish pond. There is an area that normally you dig a hole, that if you are doing your fish when you remove all the water, the fish can remain in that small hole and you can do your sampling there. So it's very ideal to do fish farming because fish is not like any other livestock that need a lot of care. They are fed twice a day. You can go and do some other duties, and therefore you can be able to make more profit because you don't need to be taking care of the fish always. There are some few things that can hinder your good production of fish, and this can be because of lack of proper feeding. Proper feeding is required, and you should feed your fish with proper food so that you have a quick maturity. And this can be done by feeding the fish twice a day, and normally fish are fed in a particular time, and it should be done allowed 10 in the morning and around 3 in the evening when the temperatures are a bit warm, so that the fish can be able to come and feed. And also the amount of feed is also very important. If you overfeed your fish, this can lead to poisoning your fish, because the leftovers of the feed goes down to the bottom of the pod and creates a mass that becomes toxic to the water. And the other thing is about water cleanliness. If the water is not good, and especially when keeping tilapia, this can kill your fish. The other thing is about when you are fertilizing your fish pod, because normally fish pod is fertilized so that you encourage the growing of planktons like algae, and also some small animals that are the natural food for the fish. Normally, like in our case, we do fertilize our fish pod through introducing chicken over the fish pod, whereby the chicken droppings go to the fish pod and it fertilizes the water, and the water is able to grow algae. But if you don't have such kind of an arrangement, you can put a sack at one corner of the fish pod, and you put chicken or cow manure in the bag, and then the nutrients from the manure will be released to the water, and hence the growing of these minute plants is encouraged. And one should be very careful when fertilizing the fish, the water, because if you overdo it, the overproduction of these algae also can be a hindrance to the amount of oxygen that is available for the fish, because there will be competition between the fish and these minute plants. Therefore, you should be very careful not to over-fertilize your pod, and also you should be very careful on when to change the water. And this is normally done by observation. You need to be very keen with the color of the water in your fish pod. And this can be done by what we call a hardy test. If you dip your your hand up to over the wrist, if you dip it in the water and then you cannot be able to observe your fingernails, automatically you know that the water color is very dense, and this can be toxic to the fish. So if you dip your hand in the water, maybe about 1 foot, and you still see that you can see your fingernails, this tells you that you need to fertilize your pod properly, so that you encourage the growing of this natural food for the fish. The other thing to observe is the frogs. Sometimes you'll find that when you have introduced your fish to the pod, you will find that there are very many frogs that also can eat your fingerings. So in this case, if your area is prone to frogs, it is important to introduce what we call the fryers. The fryers are a bit bigger than the fingerings, which cannot be eaten by the frogs. So the ideal environment for the fish should be very close to your home, where you can be able to observe your fish pod regularly, and also a place where intruders cannot come and steal your fish. And also it is very important to fence the surrounding, so that you keep away the farm animals, because sometimes if you leave the farm animals to come very close to the fish pod, the dam liner can be the hooves of the animals can break the dam liner, and this can lead to water loss. Therefore, it's very important to choose your site properly, so that you reduce the chances of loss from the flooding, loss from the predators like the birds and the snakes, and also loss from because of the floods. So with good management of your fish don't have a lot of problems, and one can be able to obtain quality and readily protein. Because if you want fish for home consumption, you can be having what we call a scooping net, that you can be able to come and scoop the number of fish that you want for your dinner. And also the scooping net can also help you when you want to do the sampling of the fish. And it is very ideal to be sampling your fish, so that you can be able to measure the weight, and then you know whether the fish is growing in the rate that it should. So normally tilapia fish is the very ideal fish, because tilapia fish is very accepted in the market, and also it grows very fast. And also tilapia can be introduced can be sold locally because of the availability of the market. And also tilapia, unlike the catfish, which normally requires more management, because when you have introduced catfish, you need to be doing very oftenly, you'll be required to come and sample your fish. And with tilapia, you only need to sample when you want to go to the market, or when you want to change your feed or the amount of feed that you are feeding. But with the catfish, you need to be sampling because they eat one another. They are cannibalistic in nature, and this tends to give you a lot of headache, because you need to be putting the fish depending with the size. Because when you have catfish of different sizes, the bigger catfish will always eat the smaller catfish. Normally, when you are doing fish farming in a pod, it is very important to put monosex in a pod, because when you stock with both sexes and you have an area maybe of 10 meters by 10 meters, there is overpopulation of the fish in that particular fish pod, and this can lead to stunted growth. Because of overpopulation, you will not be able to feed your fish properly, and also the area required for that stocking in 1 meter square, it will be very difficult for you to control the number of fish in a meter square. The other thing about putting both sexes in a fish pod is there is stunted growth of female fish, because normally fish put the eggs in the mouth, and during this period of time when the female eggs is in the mouth, the female fish don't feed, and therefore there is that stunted growth. Therefore, when a farmer wants to keep fish in a pod, it is good to go for monosex, so that you only fatten these fish in the period that I've talked about, between 6 months to 8 months, and then your fish will be ready for the market, to avoid overpopulation and to avoid retarded growth. So, and also it's very important to acquire your source of fingerlings from a good source, where normally you have a good hatchery who provide good fingerlings. And normally when you are introducing the stock in a new fish pod, it's always very important to observe some things. In a new pod, normally what happens is that you need to fertilize your pod about 2 weeks before introducing your fingerlings, and this allows the growth of the algae, so that when you have introduced your fingerlings can be able to survive, in fact, for a month, using the already existing natural food for the fish. So it's very important to go for a good hatchery when you want to introduce your fingerlings, so that you avoid fish that will not give you the desired growth rate. Your fish can be transported maybe for about 6 hours from the source to your fish pod, so that you cannot incur loss of the fish. And the other thing to note is about in a newly constructed pod, one normally have to use water that is not chlorinated, because that one can cause the loss of fish. And the other thing is about the introduction of the fish into the pod. There is what is called acclimatization. When introducing the fingerlings in the pod, you introduce them gradually so that they don't have the shock. And this one is done by introducing the container that is carrying the fingerlings, putting it in the water, and then rolling it a bit so that the water in the bucket or the water in the cylinder where you are carrying the fish, whether if you are carrying the fish in a oxygenated tube, you open the tube, lower it in the pod, and then you let the fish swim on their own. And that one reduces the chances of fish dying because of change of environment. And the other thing that is good when introducing when starting a new pod is to put lime in the bottom of the pod before you put water, so that you kill anything that is not good for the fish. And then you introduce your water to the level that is required, that level of 0.5 meters to 1.5 meters, and then you leave your pod. You fertilize your pod and then leave it for about 2 weeks. Then you can bring your fish, and then for the first few weeks, the young fish can be able to survive on the natural food before you introduce the commercial feeds. And this is normally done repeatedly. When you have finished your first stock, you can drain all the water. Then you do what is called a riming of the pod, and then you introduce the water. Then you leave it for a period of 2 weeks, and then now you reintroduce your fish. So fish farming is very ideal because it doesn't require a very big space, and also it doesn't involve a lot of labor, and also market for the fish is very, very, very big. And nowadays, as you know, people are encouraged to eat white meat compared to red meat because of medical grounds and because of the cholesterol levels that are involved. And with this, we can be able to earn a living through fish farming if the normal and the required standards are maintained. One can be able to use fish farming as an enterprise, whereby farming is very diverse, and one can opt to be a fish farmer. And I come to my head of training, and your trainer today was Erastus Maina from RODI Kenya. And RODI Kenya stands for Resources Oriented Development Initiatives Kenya, and we are based in Ruiru. Thank you.